Hi YouTube, Big Apple here with another video. Today I want to talk about what it takes to be accurate shooting a handgun. It's not like it is in the movies, imagine that. So, is it just me or is this gun not accurate? Or is it accurate? It's probably just you. True handgun accuracy really can only be measured from a ransom rest, and it could be measured from a rest by hand, but typically handgun accuracy is generally about the same. It doesn't really matter what you go to, because we're not talking about rifles with super tight tolerances. They're not shooting rounds that break the sound barrier 2 to 3 times. They're just not as accurate as rifles, period. You know, unless you have a very tightly fitted 1911 or a revolver with a very long barrel, you're generally going to get the same thing no matter what you pick up, because you don't have a ton of accuracy here. It's not very long. I mean, generally up to probably about 50 or possibly even 100 yards, a handgun is somewhat effective, but generally this should be a stepping stone for you to get to something better like a shotgun or rifle. But talking about handgun accuracy in general, ransom rest will lock it in place, and you'll actually put the dots on target, and it'll have some sort of little thing here that you can pull with a string or move something. I've never used one before, but it aims the gun in the same spot every time no matter what. And I say can be measured from a rest by hand, so you can also, they have some handgun rests where you can put your arms up on it like this and then, you know, slowly do that. But besides just that, handgun accuracy generally is probably 95% of the time, maybe even 99% of the time, directly related to improper technique. So, proper grip technique, and I'll walk through these steps. First, I'll just rattle them off. So your fingers should be off the trigger until sights are on target and you're ready to fire. Every time I teach a new shooter, that's always the first thing that I try to tell them. I usually have to tell them, 50 times, but whatever works to instill that safety measure. So you want a firm hold with your dominant hand, and you want a high grip up to the beaver tail. So you want a good grip with your dominant hand, and you want a high grip up to the beaver tail right here. So you want it nice and planted up under here, so you have as much skin on this thing as you can get. You know, I've seen some people shoot with it down here, and that creates just this big spot. Why not get more control of it? You're right there. You don't have to death grip it, but you want to have a good firm grip. And so, let's see if I can show you this while I'm holding this. Non-dominant hand should interlace knuckles, and I'll show that in a second. So get as much skin on the grip as possible, and you stack your dominant thumb over your non-dominant thumb. Okay, so dominant hand should interlace knuckles. What I mean by that is this part right here, I guess that's a second knuckle compared to your first one or whatever. You want the inside of these knuckles right at the base of your fingers to interlace with them. So generally you want them to sit right here. And then cup your hands together, and I say get as much skin on the grip as possible. I'll see people do this and they'll still do this, where you're creating this giant air pocket in here where you don't actually have control of it. You're just in there loosely. So you want to get as much grip on here as possible. You want to get all this pad of your hand here up in there. So after you interlace your hands here, get up in there tight, and then stack your dominant thumb over your non-dominant thumb like this. And I guess I have it at the end here, but I have non-dominant thumb run parallel with the frame. And what I mean is your non-dominant thumb should sit right here. It doesn't have to. I've seen shooters that don't shoot this way. And actually the way that I discovered it was when I was on target, I would constantly be pulling my shots to the left. And I had a flinch there, and so to combat that flinch, I started putting my thumb farther forward on the frame, and what they ended up doing was counteracting that motion, but it actually is proper because I have more control of it. I'm pushing on this side and this side. Even when my hand's in there, I have more control when I have that up there rather than just back here. I've got a lot more control. This whole area right here is helping me control it. So the only exception I would say here with the thumbs is a revolver. You need to keep your thumb behind the cylinder. If some of you guys watch Hickok 45, you can look up his videos. He actually did a test where he held a piece of paper in front of the cylinder on a couple different revolvers, and it just destroyed the paper. So what he's basically demonstrating is if your thumb is out in front of like in the same area as the forcing cone where the bullet goes out of the cylinder into the barrel, there's a lot of pressure right there, and you could really injure yourself doing that. So for the most part with revolvers, some will do like this, some will do like this. You'd never want to have your thumb back here behind the slide on a semi-auto, because when this thing comes back, it'll gut the crap out of you, as you can see. I mean, that's why it's called the slide, because it literally slides. So if you have your hands back here, or even with the, with the hammer in the way too, it's not as easy to see on this one, but some of the striker fired ones, I'll see people do this, and this is a big no-no. That thing will come back and just gut your hands. So you want to prevent that from happening. So now I have trigger technique. Use the pad of your finger to depress the trigger. And the way I worked on this was by visualizing pushing the trigger straight back without making the pistol move. So what I mean is this. You know, you want to have it right on there, and just visualize just pushing that guy back like that. And I have at the end too, dry fire practice is your best way to practice, and I'll get to that, but for trigger definitely is. If you're ever wondering, just line your sights up, make a nice clean break like that. That's a great way to practice. Then you allow pressure until the break, and I have follow through. So what some people will tend to do when they're new shooters is they'll do something like this where they're slapping it. And I have don't slap the trigger, hook your finger around the trigger. So you don't want to do this because you can't keep as much control as if your finger's straight here. This is the part you want on the trigger. That's a no-no. That's good. So you don't want to slap the finger, because when you do that, you're throwing your sights off target every time you do that. And you just want a nice, easy break, like I said. Just nice and easy like that. You should practice that to where the gun doesn't move when the hammer drops or the striker drops or whatever. Your main goal is to reduce your flinch to the highest degree. And you can never completely get rid of flinch, and you'll have times where you're flinching more than others or times where you're flinching less than others. You know, everybody will, regular shooters will describe this as, you know, I had a bad day at the range. Well, you probably had a tough time combating your flinch, and you were probably a little shaky that day. So it's normal. You can never completely get rid of your flinch. Maybe some mastermind out there has figured out a way. But I think to some degree there may always be a very small flinch. You try to reduce it as much as possible. So now sight picture. 3-dot, 2-dot, U-dot, etc. They all follow the same principle. You want to line up your front post in the middle of the rear sight with the tops of the sights flat. So you want to have that front post right in the middle of these. Let's see if I can get it there. And you want the equal number of light between each of those, and you want the tops of the sights to all be flat. So your front sight should be flat in that notch. I don't know how well I could do that, but that's what your sight picture should be. I have 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, hold whatever. Windage is adjustable on most pistol sights, but elevation usually isn't. So you got to find out where your pistol hits vertically and work from there. So as you can see on this one, you know, every rear sight on most pistols is drift adjustable. I've seen some, I don't know, that are pinned, but usually the front sight is just where it is, and that's it. You really can't adjust up and down unless you have an adjustable rear sight, or you have a few front sights with different heights. So, for example, this one I usually take a 12 o'clock hold, as I mentioned here. So like say, you know, clock face, this is my target. I would aim at the top of it because the front sight typically has the bullet hit a little bit lower than with something else. Like my Ruger will hit right above this dot. So that one I take more of a 6 o'clock hold. You really just have to figure out where your gun hits and work from there. I have bring the pistol to your eyes, not the other way around. So when you're going to aim, you want to bring it up. You don't want to have the gun down here and then pull your head down to meet your eyes. You want, you know, a fairly good stretch, and then you want to meet those front sights with your eye. You want to bring the gun to your eyes. You don't want to go down. I have the ultimate goal. Sight picture remains undisturbed when the trigger breaks. Wherever that front dot is when the trigger breaks is where the bullet will go. I cannot stress the front sight enough. This guy is very important. When you're shooting, anytime you're shooting, you should always be focusing on that front dot. I haven't gotten quite to the point where I can shoot both eyes open, but eventually I'll get there. As for now, you just want all your focus to be right here. This should be kind of fuzzy, and really your target should be kind of fuzzy. You want to practice focusing on that front sight because that'll instill very good technique. Generally in a self-defense encounter, you'll probably just point shoot. You'll probably just put the gun out where it feels natural, instincts will take over, and you'll make that trigger break to, you know, connect with whatever it is that you're shooting at. But anytime you're at the range, you want to pinpoint your focus on that front sight. You also do want to break your peripheral vision. So, you know, after your shots, if any of you guys watch Corey and Erica, before they reholster, they always look left and right. So even though you're focusing on that front sight, you still want to make sure you don't you don't forget about your peripherals. That's why you should eventually go to using both eyes, but you can start out using one. Stance, I can't really show this to y'all since my camera's down here, but isosceles or Weaver, both of these, the best piece of advice I can give you is lean forward. So what isosceles is, your arms have equal distance from your shoulders to where it makes an isosceles triangle. So like, you know, this is equal, this is right in the center. Weaver's more, you know, to your dominant side. To me, it'd be to the right side. And I would actually bring back my right leg a little bit since I'm right eye dominant, right arm, right leg dominant, all of that. And, you know, I'd be aiming with my right eye, obviously. But the main thing is you want to lean forward because the recoil will slowly push you back. And I've seen women too, they'll always, a lot of women, new shooters, will get up and they'll kind of lean back. I mean, I've seen men do it too. It's just improper technique that you got to work on to increase your accuracy. Best piece of advice I can give you is dry fire practice. That is your best way to practice, and it's free. You could try the pencil technique too that I've seen some guys talk about. You could drop a pen or pencil down in your barrel here, and when your hammer or striker or whatever it is hits the firing pin, that thing will go flying out. You could use the eraser too, just pop it in there, and that's also a good way to tell if your gun's light striking, is to drop a pin in there and then pull the trigger and see if it goes flying out. But that's a great technique for trying to concentrate on your trigger brake and really work on not disturbing this whole thing whenever you shoot. So ideally what you want is you want a good sight picture like this right there in the back, and you want it to not move. Let's see if I can get it. When you pull the trigger, wherever it is, you want that to not move at all. That's ideally what you want right there. But it takes a while to get really good at pistol shooting. A lot of people are surprised when I take them out to the range the first time. They're like, oh man, this is a lot harder than I thought. Well, you follow some of these tips, you can really improve on your pistol shooting and work from there, and eventually you'll get to a point where you can at least hit a silhouette, and that's really the most important thing you should be striving for anyway. So, this is Big Apple signing out. Hope you learned something new.